Ciao, and welcome to Immersion Travel Italy, a podcast where we don't just visit Italy, we experience it. I'm Katerina Ferrara, travel author, festival enthusiast, and your host. Today's episode brings us to Venice, the heart of the Veneto region, and one of the most unforgettable cities in the world. This is episode 5 of 20 in our Regional Capitals of Italy series, and I decided for the few episodes we're in, we need to stay in northern Italy to honor the spirit for the 2026 Winter Olympics. From the cultural capitals to the Alpine slopes, this season is a celebration of the North. While Milan serves as the international gateway, some of the most breathtaking competitions and the cinematic closing ceremony are taking place right here in the Veneto. The Olympics closing ceremony will unfold inside Verona's ancient Roman arena, where history, spectacle, and celebration will come together in one of the world's most atmospheric settings. Also, Carnival is returning to Venice, that magical, mysterious celebration where masks, music, and memory turn the lagoon city into a living theater. In this episode, we're going to explore Venice, from its marshy beginnings to its rise as a maritime empire. We'll connect that story to the present-day festivals and events that are bringing the world to the Veneto. And as always, all of the cities, events, and hidden gems mentioned here today are featured in my ultimate festival and travel guide, Venice and the Veneto, with walking tours, restaurant recommendations, accommodation tips. If your journey includes the Olympic sites in Lombardy as well, like Bormio, Milan, and Livigno, you'll find detailed support in my ultimate festival and travel guide, Milan and Lombardy. Venice, a city on the water, sustained by will and governed by ritual. Venice is unlike any other city in Italy or the world. Its foundations were never meant to last. Built atop wooden pilings driven into soft sediment of the lagoon islands, Venice began as a place of exile and refuge, a floating shelter for those fleeing barbarian invasions after the fall of Rome. And what began as survival soon became a strategy. In the Middle Ages, the Venetians were no longer merely hiding in the marshes. They were navigating them, trading across the Adriatic, sailing to Byzantium, and asserting independence from the very powers they once served. Venice's rise was not accidental. It was engineered, slowly, steadily, and with exceptional discipline. In 726 AD, the Venetians elected their first doge, a word derived from the Latin word duc, or leader, signaling the beginning of a unique political experiment. For more than 1,000 years, Venice would remain a republic. No kings, no popes, no foreign dynasties. One of the will of its own citizens, regulated by councils, rituals, and laws designed to outlast one man. And even George Washington and others who created the independence of America were investigating how these doges survived. By the 10th century, Venice had already become a key maritime power. Its ships dominated Adriatic trade, its navy patrolled the eastern Mediterranean, and its merchants brokered everything from silk to spices to salt and slaves. Venice expanded not through conquest alone, but through commerce, diplomacy, and logistic brilliance. It built a colonial empire of ports and islands from Crete and Cyprus to the Dalmatian coast and the Peloponnese. Trade routes became lifelines. Fortresses became outposts of the Republic, and at its height, Venice controlled one of the richest and most strategically placed merchant networks in the world. You can still see the legacy of that empire today. Venetian architecture, stone carvings, and city planning echo far beyond Italy. In Piran and Koper in Slovenia, in fortified streets of Dubrovnik, and along the waterfronts of Split in Croatia. The Lion of St. Mark, the symbol of the Venetian Republic, still watches gently over gates and harbors throughout the Adriatic. The wealth that poured into Venice from these holdings shaped every aspect of the city, its architecture, its art, its confidence. Palaces rose along the Grand Canal, not as homes, but as public statements of stability. Church facades glittered with gold brought from the east, and inside the Basilica of San Marco, the relics of St. Mark, famously stolen from Alexandria by Venetian merchants, offer spiritual legitimacy to match commercial power. The Venetian Republic was obsessed with balance and order. The Doge wore elaborate robes, but was bound to strict protocol. Decisions were not made by decree, but by committee. Even elections were regulated by a complex system of lotteries and votes designed to prevent corruption and concentrate power only within the bounds of shared control. This was a city of checks and balances, where ambition was allowed but never unregulated. The Council of Ten, Venice's secretive watchdog committee, operated both intelligence agency and an internal court, ensuring that no citizen, no matter how wealthy, could rise above the law. And the system worked. While other Italian city-states were torn apart by factionalism, foreign invasions, or dynastic feuds, Venice endured. Through plague, war, shifting alliances, the Republic held. Its navy repelled crusaders and pirates. Its merchants adapted to changing markets. And for centuries, Venice served as the great broker of East and West, a neutral, calculating, elegant power built on the water and willed into permanence. By the 18th century, Venice's power had already begun to erode. The age of the sail was giving way to the age of the steam engine. The Atlantic had overtaken the Mediterranean in global trade, and the merchant empire that once defined Venice was now feeling dangerously outdated. Then came Napoleon. This guy. In 1797, during the First Italian Campaign, Napoleon swept across northern Italy with a speed and ferocity that stunned Europe. But Venice didn't fall to cannon fire or siege. It fell to exhaustion. The Republic, weakened and diplomatically isolated, lacked the strength to resist. The Doge abdicated, the Great Council dissolved, and with not a single shot fired inside the city, Venice surrendered. And after more than a millennium of self-rule, the Republic of Venice vanished. Napoleon ceded the city to the Austrian Empire under the Treaty of Campo Formio, trading it like a chess piece in a larger game. For the first time since the 8th century, Venice was no longer independent. And Napoleon and the French would return briefly later during the Napoleonic campaigns. The age of the Republic was over. The Venetian calendar stopped counting its own years, the flag with the golden lion was lowered, and the city entered a new chapter. In the 19th century, Venice became part of the Austrian Habsburg Empire, ruled from afar and treated as a provincial capital rather than its former republic self. Public monuments were altered, trade slowed, pride endured, but without power. Still, the spirit of the Republic lived on. In the rituals, the palaces, the fierce local identity, and the quiet insistence that Venice was just not any other city. When Italy began its campaign for unification, Venice became a symbol of what had been lost and what could be reclaimed. After years of uprisings, negotiations, and war, Venice joined the Kingdom of Italy in 1866. But unlike other annexed cities, Venice never fully assimilated. Its loyalties were older, deeper, and more complex. Venice remembered what it had been, and it never stopped mourning its republic. In the centuries since, Venice has continued to shape and be shaped by history, always on its own terms. It survived 2 world wars, floods, mass tourism, and political change. It's a place where bells still echo in stone courtyards, where gondolas glide past Gothic windows, where political power may have shifted, but ceremonial memory endures. And, as you know, every Italian city has a center. The center is Piazza San Marco, or St. Mark's Square. It's the stage upon which Venice has declared itself for centuries. Grand, theatrical, and impossibly ornate. It was once called the drawing room of Europe. But before we dive into that grandeur, let me tell you a story. When my family arrived in Venice for the first time, it was late at night. We were tired. The trip had been long, with complicated travel, and though we were staying not far from Piazza San Marco, I could not bring myself to go out. I just needed to rest. My husband, however, decided he was going to go out for a walk, and he came back changed, filled with joy. He had stumbled into Piazza San Marco by accident, following empty streets and the faint sound of water lapping against stone. When he arrived, there was no one there, not one person, not under the porticos of the Doge's palace, not beside the lion-topped columns, and not in front of the Basilica of San Marco itself. It was like the city had paused just for him. The next morning, while my husband and our son were still asleep, I woke early, determined to experience the San Marco moment. And with the help of Google Maps and quiet determination, I found it. It was just before dawn. It was silent and golden. The sun was rising slowly behind San Marco Basilica, creating soft pink light across the Gothic spires and mosaics of the basilica. The marble glowed, the pigeons hadn't yet stirred, and for a few minutes I had the entire square to myself. It was a special bonus for me. The reason we were finding the area so empty is because the week before is the week Italy had technically reopened after COVID lockdowns. The city had been closed for months, and our tour guide, who we met later that day, would tell us how grateful she was to see visitors again. Who would have thought, she said, that Venetians would ever miss the tourists. Let's talk next about the Basilica of St. Mark. Its onion domes, golden mosaics, and horses prancing above the central arch. This is not a Romanesque basilica. It's not fully Gothic. It's Byzantine-inspired masterpiece, filled with Eastern influence, reflecting the city's deep ties to Constantinople and the wider Mediterranean world. The basilica was built to house the relics of St. Mark, brought or stolen, depending on who's telling the story, from Alexandria by two Venetian merchants in the year 28 AD. According to legend, the saint's remains were smuggled out in a barrel of pork to avoid inspection by Muslim guards, a story now immortalized in the mosaic above the main portal. Step inside and the light changes. Gold shimmers from nearly every surface. Over 8,000 square meters of mosaics, many centuries old. Let your eyes adjust. And if you've purchased the ticket to climb the upper terrace, you'll be rewarded with something extraordinary because you can get close enough to touch those mosaics. Don't touch them, but you can get close enough. From this vantage point, the artistry becomes more personal because you see those tesserae close up and how they shimmer in the light. It's breathtaking. You will also, while you're inside, look for the Pala d'Oro, the high altar screen studded with over 1,900 gems. It was crafted in Constantinople and brought here in stages, then expanded by Venetian goldsmiths. It tells the story of both faith and wealth in a city that knew how to turn sacred into sovereign. We've come to love this church so much. We've done the after-hours Basilica of San Marco tour not once but 3 times, and we would do it again. There's something unforgettable about entering the basilica in darkness, part of a small group, and then slowly they start turning on the lights, revealing the gold mosaics that glow from the walls, the ceilings, the domes. It's like witnessing an unveiling. You get to stand right in front of the Pala d'Oro without the daytime crowds and truly take in its detail. You get to descend to the crypt, where the hush is even deeper, the air cooler, and the timelessness even stronger. It's one of the most moving experiences we've had in Venice, so much that we've made it a part of every return trip. And the best part, many tour operators offer this after-hours experience. I will include these links in my blog post associated with this episode on KaterinaFerrara.com if you'd like to use them to plan for your visit. We also visit the rooftop terrace every time we go. It's got one of the most fascinating views of Venice. From here, you can look out over the Piazza San Marco, trace the curves of the lagoon, and understand why this square has been Venice's outdoor throne room for centuries. But the treasure is behind you. The 4 bronze horses, the famous quadriga, once stood at the entrance to the Hippodrome of Constantinople. They were taken by Venetians in the Fourth Crusade in 1204 and brought here as trophies of power. These are replicas. The originals are displayed just inside the Basilica's museum to protect them. The horses are a reminder of a time when Venice was just not surviving, it was dominating. After the Basilica, take time to linger in the square. If you want to experience the Venetian ritual of leisure at its most refined, make a stop at the Café Florian under the porticos. In 1720, Florian was founded, one of the oldest cafes in the world, and sitting here is like stepping into a different century. The red velvet interior, the mirrored walls and chandeliers, everything whispers from another era. This is where Goethe, Byron, and Casanova once sat. Order an espresso or a decadent hot chocolate, or in the afternoon they have great gelato. Let yourself absorb the rhythm of the square. It's a bit expensive, but honestly, it's really worth it. It's more than just coffee, it's atmosphere. It's a Venetian experience that lingers long after the cup is empty. Before we leave the square, there's one more iconic structure to visit, and that's the Campanile di San Marco. The brick bell tower rises nearly 100 meters above the piazza. It looks ancient, and it is, but not entirely. The original tower collapsed on July 14, 1902, crumbling in on itself after centuries of stress and structural strain. Miraculously, no one was killed, not even the caretaker's cat. And in true Venetian fashion, the city decided to rebuild it exactly as it was, brick by brick, stone by stone, in the same spot. What they added, though, was something modern and very welcome, an elevator. That makes this one of the few major towers in Italy you don't have to climb by foot. You don't have to climb 500 spiral stairs. It's just a smooth ride up to one of the best views in Italy. From the top, you can see it all. The red roofs of Venice, the bell towers scattered across the lagoon, leaning, the silver blue shimmer of the Adriatic. On a clear day, the silhouette of the Dolomites to the north. a perspective that reminds you that Venice has always meant to be looked at from the sea and sky. Tickets should absolutely be reserved in advance, especially in peak season. You'll find official links and insider tips in the blog associated with this podcast on my website. I've seen many people get turned away because they did not book in advance, so get your tickets early. Directly across from the Basilica and Tower stands the Palazzo Ducale, or the Doge's Palace. This is a distinct, delicate pink and white marble facade with lacy Gothic arcades and open colonnades. They suggest a kind of lightness, almost like a palace built for poetry. This was not a royal residence. It was an administrative and judicial engine of the Republic of Venice, and the most carefully choreographed building in the city. Inside, decisions were made and conspiracies were judged, all according to elaborate protocols that defined Venetian politics for over 1,000 years. The Doge, elected for life but strictly limited in his powers, lived and worked here. But he was never a monarch. He was a symbol, the embodiment of the Republic's ideals, restrained by law, surrounded by councils, and always watched. Walking through the palace feels like walking through the political system. You'll enter the grand halls where the Great Council met, sometimes with over 1,000 members debating issues of trade, war, and diplomacy. The walls are lined with monumental paintings, including Tintoretto's Paradise, said to be the largest oil painting in the world. But again, the art here wasn't just for beauty, it was instructional, reminding council members of the weight of justice, the glory of Venice, and the cost of failure. There are more intimate rooms where the Council of 10 met secretly, investigating corruption, espionage, and sedition. Their presence was so feared that simply being summoned to testify could ruin a reputation. And finally, during your tour of the Doge's Palace, you'll cross the narrow, enclosed corridor known as the Bridge of Sighs, named for the breath prisoners would take as they glimpsed their last view of the city before entering the cold, stone cells below. Sometimes the cells were even filled with some water. It's a poetic name, but the reality was brutal. Venice maintained order not through showy punishment, but through quiet precision. The prisons are not theatrical, they were efficient, controlled, hidden in plain sight. Today, visiting the Doge's Palace is a rare chance to walk through the Republic that no longer exists, to feel the weight of history, art, and power in every room. As with the other major sites of Venice, I strongly recommend booking your tickets in advance. You'll find updated ticket links in my blog. Venice is a city of ritual, and one of the most powerful examples comes each year during the Festa della Senza, or the Feast of the Ascension, a festival that dates back to the year 1000 and reenacts Venice's mystical marriage to the sea. We planned a trip to Venice to be part of this celebration, and what we witnessed felt more than symbolic. It was like the entire city was a part of this event. From Piazza San Marco, or more accurately, Piazzetta di San Marco, the open area facing the lagoon between the Basilica and Doge's Palace, we watched a remarkable procession unfold. Gondolas, bisone, and other traditional boats glided past in full ceremonial formation. There were rowers in white uniforms, teens laughing and racing one another, the older Venetians rowing with an elegance that spoke of deep familiarity. Drums echoed from the boats. Flags fluttered. It was like a theater on the move. After watching the procession pass, we made our way to the Lido, where many of the other events are held. On the shore, locals gathered for food, music, and speeches. We saw teenagers competing in rowing races, their oars slapping on the water with joyful defiance. Then the adult races, and finally the Serenissima, Venice's ceremonial boat carrying the city officials, moved out into the lagoon to perform the marriage of the sea, where a gold ring is cast into the water, affirming Venice's eternal bond with the sea. Rowing clubs, school groups, neighborhood associations, they were all represented. Centuries-old tradition made visible for anyone who passed along to see it. In that moment, surrounded by families, music, and water, I realized that even though the Republic of Venice no longer rules the seas, its memory still rose through the canals in celebration. You probably know that Venice is filled with treasure, much like Rome, Palermo, Napoli. Its beauty isn't just found in the obvious places. It's tucked into side chapels, echoing in hidden cloisters, in the scuola, the confraternities, hanging quietly in churches that visitors just walk past without stepping inside. To be honest, I could talk about Venice for hours and never get to every place you should visit. That's exactly why I created the ultimate festival and travel guide, Venice and the Veneto. This has a full list of places to visit, including self-guided walking tours, where to go to get cicchetti, those wonderful little Venetian bar snacks served tapas style with a glass of local wine. Think fried mozzarella, marinated artichokes, fresh cod on crostini. And I also include restaurant recommendations and accommodations. And of course, my full calendar of festivals, traditions, and local events. You can find the book on Amazon, or if you go to KaterinaFerrara.com, all of the book links are there. With that said, let me tell you about my husband and my favorite church in Venice, the place we make sure to visit every time we come to town. It's the Santa Maria Gloriosa dei Ferrari, and it's also just called the Friary. It is in the San Polo district, tucked away from the flow of tourist crowds. From the outside, it looks like a simple Gothic church in brick. But when you step inside, it opens up to one of the most quietly extraordinary places in the city. This church holds some of the greatest art in Venice. But what makes it special is not just what is here, but how you experience it. We love this church because you see paintings exactly where they were meant to be, not separated into a museum or behind glass, but in situ, in the original chapels and altars for which they were created. One of our favorite details is how the painted columns in some of the altarpieces match the architectural columns surrounding them. There's harmony, a conversation between art and space. You don't just look at a Titian or Bellini here, you feel how the space was meant to be worked, how the light would hit the painting. In the Friary, you'll find Titian's Assumption of the Virgin rising above the main altar like a burst of light. His later work, the Pesaro Madonna, is tucked into a side chapel with a perfect sense of perspective that only reveals itself when you approach it slowly. The tomb of Canova is here, shaped like a marble pyramid, elegant and quiet. And the tomb of Titian himself, resting in the very church where his masterpieces still speak. Every time we visit, something new reveals itself. The change of light in the day, the different people who are seeing the church for the first time. It's the kind of experience that you can't replicate in a museum. That said, there is one museum in Venice that I will recommend, and that is the Galleria dell'Accademia. The Accademia is just across the Grand Canal near the Accademia Bridge. The museum holds the most important collection of Venetian painting in the world, spanning centuries of faith, wealth, innovation, and storytelling. You'll see Bellini's Madonnas, tender and full of atmosphere. Tintoretto's dramatic gestures with scenes that pull you into the movement. Carpaccio's storytelling panels, rich in Venetian detail. And Veronese's grand pageantry, filled with architectural fantasies and swirling silks. The museum also includes Leonardo da Vinci's Vitruvian Man, though it's rarely on public display due to its fragility. The best time to get to the Accademia is first thing in the morning or late in the afternoon, especially on weekdays. The morning gives paintings warmth and shadow, and you'll have more time to linger without midday crowds. On our last visit, our guide recommended a place that turned out to be one of our favorite meals in Venice, at Osteria La Zucca. Don't let the name fool you. Zucca does mean pumpkin. This is a charming osteria. It isn't about squash. It's known for its creative, seasonal, and often vegetable-based dishes that feel both Venetian and refreshingly modern. The space is warm and intimate with few tables right along the canal. We ordered a ricotta and spinach dish. We also had tagliatelle with zucchini and almonds, and both were delicious. And, of course, a glass of wine from the Veneto to round it out. This place didn't feel touristy or fussy. If you're planning to go, make a reservation. Lunch fills up quickly, especially in the spring and fall. The location makes it easy to continue your walking tour with the Friary just around the corner and the Accademia an easy stroll away. Let's talk about neighborhoods. Venice is divided into 6 historical districts called sestieri, each with its own distinct personality. In the past, we've always stayed in San Marco, and it's easy to understand why. You're close to the Basilica and Piazza of San Marco, Doge's Palace, Rialto Bridge. It's very central, and you can walk to everything easily. But on our most recent trip, we decided to do something different. We were staying for 8 nights in Venice, and to help manage the cost, I found an apartment in Cannaregio, right on the Grand Canal. And now I'm hooked. Cannaregio isn't a hidden neighborhood. The main promenade is one of the key walking routes between the train station and the center. But it feels different. It's still Venetian in a way that some of the more touristed neighborhoods have lost. Mornings here are not tour groups. They're grandfathers taking their grandchildren to school on scooters, locals chatting at the corner cafe, and market stalls opening for the day. And we quickly developed our own breakfast ritual. And I cannot recommend this place highly enough. It's called Pasticceria Pitteri. This little family pastry shop in Cannaregio is the real thing. Family run, Bar full of locals grabbing a quick espresso on their way to work. Fresh pastries coming out of the back. We stood at the counter every morning sipping cappuccinos. I might have had two on some days. And enjoying whatever came out of the oven. You could smell the baking from the street. You could see the ladies doing their work. It was that fresh. There are no tables. You're not going to sit down here and have a nice breakfast. You're standing with the locals. And it is absolutely worth a stop. It's a different experience from sitting in San Marco, where I do recommend you sit down. We have arrived previously during a period of high tide called Acqua Alta, and it was fascinating to witness firsthand. This has always lived with water, but in recent decades, rising sea levels and storm surges have made the Acqua Alta, the high tide flooding, more frequent. We've seen it during one visit in 2021 in Piazza San Marco, and then we also saw it in Cantareggio when we were there most recently. To protect the city, Italy has built the Mose system, a series of mobile barriers that can temporarily close the lagoon from the Adriatic during extreme tides. Since becoming operational in 2020, Mose has prevented dozens of major floods. It's not the perfect solution, but it has dramatically reduced the number of days the city floods each year. For visitors, this means Venice is more accessible and resilient than in past decades. If you're enjoying this episode and you want to go even deeper into Venice's spirit, traditions, and experiences, I have another full episode you don't want to miss. It's actually about Venice's Carnivale, and I'm joined by Eveline Basaggio, an Italian teacher and friend, art historian and cultural guide who knows the city inside and out. Together we talk about the origins of Carnival, the role of art and fashion, and what it's like to attend a masked ball, a workshop, and exclusive events. We also share stories from our own times in Venice, including our visits where we got to work with a mosaic artist, historic ateliers, and encounters with families who keep centuries-old traditions alive. You can find that Carnival episode linked in the blog post, and I'll also link it here in the description. For dinner, one of our favorite classic spots is Antiche Carampane. Tucked behind the Rialto Market, it's beloved by Venetians for good reason. The seafood is exceptional, the house pasta, spaghetti alle vongole, is unforgettable, and the setting feels timeless. Another romantic option is Trattoria al Gatto Nero on Burano. If you plan to linger in the evening and visit the lace shops, that's a very well-known Venetian spot. At some point during your time in Venice, you're going to feel called to the other islands. I recommend that you spend a half day or a full day visiting Murano and Burano. They're extensions of Venice, each with its own rhythm, its own craft, and its own identity. Murano is just a short ride from Venice, and it has been home to the city's glassmakers since 1291. That's when the Venetian Republic ordered all the glass furnaces to relocate off the main islands to reduce the risk of fire, but also to protect their techniques from espionage. To this day, Murano glass remains one of the most famous artisan traditions in Italy. Getting there is simple. You'll take the Vaporetto line 4.1 or 4.2 from the Fondamenta Nove or San Zaccaria. The ride is about 10 to 15 minutes, and it has great views of the lagoon along the way. Once you've arrived, you can explore the Glass Museum, Museo del Vetro, to understand how the tradition evolved. But the real magic happens when you step into a working glass furnace. Many studios offer short, live demonstrations. Watching a master glassblower turn molten sand into a vase or a horse or a goblet in seconds is absolutely worth your time. On one of our visits, we took a private boat tour around all of the islands with my teenage son and his friend. We ended up at the workshop of Gina Mazzucco, a name we hadn't heard before, but quickly came to admire. To our surprise, my son was chosen to participate in a glass-blowing demonstration. Right there in the furnace. He got to handle the tools, shape the molten glass, and be part of the show. It was thrilling for us, and Gino, the artist himself, was there at the entire time, explaining the process and guiding them with a patient, almost theatrical grace. The studio was filled with beautiful works of glass, and yes, I ended up purchasing a very large, heavy piece. Gino arranged to have it shipped safely home, and it arrived in perfect condition. Our boat driver, Alessandro, clearly knew Gino, and to this day, my husband swears the whole thing was a setup, a brilliant Venetian scheme to sell me that piece of art. But honestly, I didn't know anything about the demonstration or where we were going ahead of time. I was genuinely impressed to meet the artist himself and see his work up close. For this experience made Murano very personal, not just a stop, but a memory woven into our family's story of Venice. And before leaving the island, be sure to visit the Church of Santa Maria e San Donato. one of the true treasures of Murano. You can approach it by boat, as we did, which adds to the sense of discovery. The church rising quietly above the canal, modest on the outside but full of wonder within. It's famous for its 12th century Byzantine mosaics, including the magnificent inlaid marble floor that stretches across the nave in a geometric pattern and symbolic designs. One of the most striking elements is the depiction of the Last Judgment on the back wall, worked in colorful stone and glass, so finely crafted it feels more like embroidery than pavement. And then in the sanctuary, you'll find something unexpected: the bones that belong to a dragon, slain by Saint Donatus, whose relics are kept here. It's the kind of church that doesn't appear on a top 10 list, but it absolutely should. It's a place where history, faith, and art still whisper from the stones beneath your feet. From Murano, you can continue on to Burano, either using the Vaporetto 12 or transferring back to the Fondamenta Nove. That's Fondamenta 9, by the way. It takes a little bit longer. It's about 35 to maybe 45 minutes, but it's worth your journey. Burano is a painter's dream. Every house is painted a vivid color: pink, red, yellow, blue, creating a town that looks like it was imagined by an artist. According to local legend, fishermen painted their homes in bright colors so they could find them in fog returning from the sea. But Burano isn't just a photo opportunity. It's the historic center of Venetian lace making, a tradition that dates back to the Renaissance. Visit the Lace Museum, the Museo di Merletto, in Piazza Galuppi, or simply peek into the lace shops where the women still sit in the windows, hand-stitching impossibly delicate patterns. This is true art. Wander the canals, pause for seafood, or a sweet bussola cookie. Burano moves slowly, and you should too. On our last visit, we extended our walk over the footbridge to the island of Matsorbo, the quieter neighboring island that connects directly to Burano. There we had lunch at the Trattoria alla Maddalena, a fantastic restaurant with canal views and a peaceful open-air setting. The food was delicious, the service was excellent, and we lingered there for a while watching the boats arrive carrying middle and high school students who were taking the boats like we take a school bus. These teens take the Vaporetto from the outer islands to Venice each day to go to school. And it was a part of local life against the backdrop of timeless beauty that made this moment feel even more special. Vaporetto schedules change seasonally, so you can visit the ACTV stops and see times of day. And I recommend for this trip to leave in the morning so that you can take the whole day and just relax. You'll find links and tips for the islands and information on my blog, on the website, and also much more detail in my Venice and Veneto book. The best gelato. If you're ready to close the day with something sweet, Gelateria Nico on the Zattere waterfront is one of Venice's best-loved gelato spots. The classic order here is the Gianduto Affogato, a dense block of chocolate hazelnut gelato drowned in whipped cream and espresso. Grab a seat along the canal and watch the sun sink behind the Giudecca. Let the day end the Venetian way, with elegance. I would be remiss if I didn't give you a great spot for the cicchetti, the local appetizer-type foods. One of my favorite spots is the Cantine del Vino Già Schiavi in Dorso Duro. The counter is always full of fresh bites, creamy bacala, gorgonzola and walnuts, smoked swordfish with orange zest. The locals line up shoulder to shoulder with the visitors. It's the kind of place where you let the bartender choose for you, and they're happy to help you out. Since the Olympics are starting, I want to mention Cortina d'Ampezzo, which is hosting several of the major competitions. If you have time in your itinerary, Cortina makes a spectacular day trip, whether you're going to the Olympics or not. It's about 2.5 hours from Venice, winding north in the Dolomites. Think alpine skiing under dramatic limestone peaks and a legacy that includes the 1956 Olympics. Even if you're here in the off-season, Cortina offers hiking trails, cable cars, and panoramic cafes that frame the mountains like Renaissance paintings. It's an entirely different side of the Veneto, cool, crisp, and cinematic. You know that festivals and sagre, those wonderful food-centered celebrations, are at the heart of my travel writing. I truly want travelers to experience Italy the way I do, and the way the locals do, through the rhythms of the year, the flavors of the season, and the 1,000-year-old traditions that turn an ordinary trip into something unforgettable. So I would be remiss if I didn't talk about only Carnival. As spectacular as it is, Venice celebrates all year long. Complete calendar of events, regattas, rituals, and seasonal festivals that reveal Venice in a completely different way. Carnivale is in February, and it includes the Volo dell'Angelo, the Flight of the Angel, from the Campanile, or masked processions in Piazza San Marco. And you can always see all of these events on my Instagram at Katerina Ferrara Author. April and May, the Festa della Senza and spring celebrations. As the city blooms, so does ritual life, the Feast of the Ascension that I recommended before, as well as art openings, sacred music concerts, and open-air events fill the calendar. In June and July, you've got the Feast of St. Peter in Castello and the Festa del Redentore. Held on the island of St. Peter in Castello, the Feast of St. Peter is a deeply local celebration with processions, traditional food, and evening lights. In July, Venice erupts with joy for the Festa del Redentore, a massive summer festival with a candle-lit flotilla, the temporary bridge to the Redentore Church, fireworks over the lagoon, and an all-night celebration. While much of Italy slows down in August for Ferragosto, Venetians head to the Lido and the outer islands. It's festive and full of relaxed rituals like patron saint feast and beach fireworks. Cannaregio and Dorsoduro feel calmer, while the Lido and Burano come alive with color and sound. In September, you've got the Regatta Storica and the Venice International Film Festival. Venice turns regal in early September. The Regatta Storica brings costume rowers and historic boats to the Grand Canal in one of the city's grandest traditions. At the same time, the Venice Film Festival on the Lido draws global attention, a fascinating contrast between ancient and contemporary. On November 21st, the city celebrates the Festa della Madonna della Salute with a pilgrimage across a temporary bridge to the Church of the Maria of the Salute, giving thanks for deliverance from the plague. Locals light candles, vendors sell sweets, and the city feels united in memory. Venice in December is poetic. Lights reflect on misty canals, small Christmas markets open in Campo Santo Stefano and along the Strada Nuova. Churches offered concerts and midnight mass. It's a time of quiet magic made for wandering and wonder. As we wrap up this episode of Venice, I want to remind you that what we explored here is just the beginning. Venice is a city of endless layers and incredible sights to see. From the grandeur of Piazza San Marco to the quiet back canals of Cannaregio, from mosaic-filled churches to the islands where lace and glass are still made by hand. There is far more than I can give you in a single episode. But my ultimate festival and travel guide, Venice and the Veneto, I go deeper into the city's neighborhoods, festivals, walking routes, and hidden gems, including my personal favorites. So you can enjoy cicchetti and include immersive traditions like the Festa della Redentore in your plans. You'll also find day trips across the lagoon, restaurant recommendations, and helpful itineraries for visiting during high season. The book is available on Amazon. Just search Katerina with a K, Ferrara, or visit katerinaferrara.com for links, bonus blog content, and the companion Venice Carnival episode I mentioned earlier. As always, I love hearing from you. If you have questions about Venice, ideas for future episodes, or destinations you'd like to see covered in this series, you can email me directly at katerina@katerinaferrara.com or reach out to me through the contact page on my website. Thank you for joining me on Immersion Travel Italy. Until next time, travel slowly, travel intentionally, and let the places you visit tell their stories.